What up, everybody? Got some boppin' music today and I'm digging it. How y'all doing? Dang, it's Thursday is right. I can't believe it's already here. It has been a long day. God, are you all out of chewing gum? There it is. Okay. Hello, everybody. It's good to see all y'all. It has been quite the week for me, I gotta say. What kind of Monday is it? It's a Monday +4? +3? Hello, everyone. Yeah, we did a really big release at work this week that we've literally been working towards for a long time, like almost a solid year. It's been a long time, many months of work, and it's a new builds plugin on Netlify that automatically installs if you use Next.js. And so I've talked a little bit about Next.js before, and I'm gonna pull up the links that way it's not just me talking about nothing. But on Netlify now, if you were to use any parts of Next.js that require a node server, like server-side rendering, next image, internationalized routing, preview mode, that kind of stuff, it just automatically works, and it's great. And so that is the link. Hello, everybody. Hello, Andy. I'm looking forward to trying to get a new job and get away from a toxic environment. Ooh, good luck. Toxic environments are no fun. Thank you, Luke. Yeah, it's been a week, but it's done. I truly have just been I've been just decompressing by watching chick flicks that I've seen many times this week, and just lots and lots of romantic comedies. So I've seen like 2 Weeks Notice, I saw 4 Christmases, I saw, oh man, name a Sandra Bullock film and I've probably seen it in the past few days. But anyway, it's been a good time. I'm glad it's finally out. I forgot it was Thursday until Jason streamed earlier today. I'm so sad I missed Jason's stream. For those who don't know, if you go to learnwithjason.dev, he has a very fun stream, and he added this thing where like the chat can control like a little image of some kind, and they put like a dumpster over his face. It looked fun, but I was recording a podcast, so I didn't get to watch. Speed for Sandra Bullock chick flick. Yeah. Can I say I intend to apply for Netlify just because of the people I see working there? Do it. I think that is a very valid reason to want to work there. Can we be best friends? Probably. Thanks for liking the hoodie. It's actually a Cheerios hoodie. My hair is getting long. But I had an internship at General Mills 10 years ago. And I got this hoodie there, and it's one of my favorite hoodies. Hey, Darth Millennial, welcome back. Taco Bell and Cheerios hoodies, you got it all. I know. The one food that I really wish I had like swag for is Claussen pickles. I love pickles, and Claussen pickles are the best. They're so good. And for a while, I would like occasionally check their Twitter, check on things to see if they would come out with some kind of food-related swag, because I would wear it. And they didn't, but as of January, their Twitter account is suddenly active, and they have like a person dedicated to it. And so I've definitely been going into the DMs being like, I want a sweatshirt, and we'll see if they make one, because I want that. They must be a big deal. Yeah. I relish the opportunity to wear pickle clothing. Bonjour from Paris, wow! Can you get a dill pickle costume? I feel like that would be a little disruptive in the day if you just saw me sitting there in a meeting with just like my face cut out of a giant pickle. I could, but I feel like that wouldn't necessarily be productive. Is there a way to watch your document without a USA credit card? Which one? Do you mean the Big Dream documentary? 'Cause that's from a while ago. And I think that's on Amazon if you want to get it through Amazon, but otherwise I don't know where else it is. My documentary on dark energy? Yes. Yes, Josh. Let me actually look. Because I haven't had people ask me about that in a long time. Hello, Patriscus. Welcome. Yeah, I'm not sure. Hola, hola, hello everybody. What have y'all been working on? I've truly just been so deep in Next.js land. But yesterday I did give a talk on how reducers work in JavaScript, and that was pretty fun because it was outside of that framing I've been doing. Am I planning to work as a developer all my life? Good question. I don't know. I really like coding, and so I'm not. I would not be sad if I just ended up being a dev forever. That being said, I could see myself trying other things in coding for fun too. But I would definitely keep coding. Did I build my mechanical keyboard? Yes, I did. Overhauling the entirety of a storage of a service in Go. Are your glasses for protection against blue light? Yes, and also for vision, because I have very, very bad vision. But yeah, these are blue light prescription glasses. Because, yeah, no, I don't even need to. I can't emphasize enough how bad my vision is. Like I can't read any of the text. I can't even really fully see my hand if I went like this. I don't have great vision at all. What would I do if I weren't a dev? When I was like deciding when I was younger what direction I wanted to go in, I liked the idea of architecture. I feel like if I could do like drafting 3D modeling kinds of things, I would really enjoy that. I took a lot of CAD classes back in the day, and I enjoyed making 3D models and stuff. And I also like woodworking. So building something. On Monday, I'm starting a new job at Standard Notes. Oh, at Standard Notes! I actually just got that app. That's awesome. Where are you based? I assume they're fully remote, but are they? I don't actually know anything about them besides that they seem to have a cool note-taking app. What about Wanda? Heyo. I haven't seen the show, so I can't make a funny pun out of that. But hey, you found me through Twitter. I've been doing ClojureScript professionally for the last 3 years. Wow, good work. Thanks for congratulating on doubling my salary. My team was definitely like, so did you get that raise? I'm like, this was a joke, and if I got that raise, everyone would know about it. It did not work, but When did my vision stop getting worse? I mean, I've had bad vision forever, and I think I got glasses when I was like 10, and I didn't even fully realize I had bad vision until then, and then I was like, wow, the world is in HD. I'd say my vision has stayed around the same for the past several years, though. I'm deep in Netlify edge handlers. You know, I am very curious about whatever you're implementing, because I wanted to build some interesting demos with edge handlers, but I admit there's some aspects of it where I'm like, it's kind of like redirects and serverless functions had a beautiful baby. And so a lot of the use cases I keep coming up with, I'm like, you know, I could just do this with redirects, or I could just do this with serverless functions. So I'd love to hear anything you're building with them. They're fully remote. Oh, you're in Argentina, nice. Thanks for liking my videos. Stop changing between note-taking apps. I mean, I'm officially switching everything to Obsidian today after work, I've decided. And so I'm going to be all in on Obsidian, especially because I did get early access to their, got on their supporter tier so I could access the mobile app. The mobile app's good. It's not as good as Bear's, but the thing is, I love Bear, but I can't use it on my Windows PC, and that's annoying, and it's really started to get in the way, and I've waited for way too long for them to get updates. And so Obsidian has been making the updates that I want, and so I'm switching over. I do plan on trying out standard notes though a little bit, because there might be a couple things that might work better on that. Also with Obsidian, the data is yours. Yeah, for sure. Have I considered LASIK? I have many times. I won't get into the whole full story, but I'll give you a high level thing. I used to not sleep very well because I signed up for way too many things, to the point where my vision got very, very bad because I was sleeping on an average 1 or 2 hours a night, and I almost went blind. And because that messed up my vision so badly because I wasn't sleeping well, I was no longer even eligible to get LASIK, and it was very, very bad. That's the very high level summary. So yes, I would consider LASIK, but I want to make sure that my vision is like regulated, good, solid, and then we'll, because they say that your vision shouldn't change within a certain number of years before getting it, and so I want to make sure that that is all good first. What state management do you recommend for Next.js? I don't use Redux. Honestly, set up a context wrapper around your app_app.js and use state or useReducer in that. That's how I do it. There's lots of comments, so if I miss your question, just repost it. Do you suggest using hooks for big projects with React instead of using classes? Yes, 100%. Hooks are the future. Avoid classes at all costs. Yes, get your 8 hours of sleep. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, looking away from screens every few hours. Like if I have really intense days, like again, this past Tuesday we did our big launch. I wanted to play video games and do all kinds of stuff, but I had to force myself to just lay on the couch, do other things, and not be at my computer for my eyes, because it's important. When you were at Amazon, did you ever have to do any work on a way that confirmed the Bezos API mandate was true? That's a thing. It's a thing. The stuff that I worked on didn't touch that kind of mandate as much, but yeah, that API mandate it's a thing. Yeah, let's see. Slowly shifting everything to Obsidian too. Nice. Yeah, no, I think Obsidian is going to be my like deep dive of everything. Like all of my stuff is going to go in there. The one thing that has been a sticking point that I'm trying to figure out is for my newsletter, when people send me submissions to their solutions for the interview question of the week, sometimes they tweet it, sometimes they email it, sometimes they DM it, sometimes they send it on Discord. Like it comes from a lot of different places, and as a result, I want to be able to get that at any time. And so I kind of, whenever I see it, whether it's a Twitter notification or an email or something, I put it into a note that I can access anywhere. And I want to be able to do that on my phone, and Bear has allowed me to do that pretty well. But with Obsidian, because of how the iOS sync is, I was hoping to use Dropbox for everything, for all of my notes, but I think I'd have to actually get their sync service for it to work properly for what I want to do. Anyway, that's been my thought process, but I think standard notes might be a good in-between just for that case specifically. I got LASIK like 6 months ago. My right eye is fantastic, but my left eye is on the struggle bus. Really? I have heard about the dryness. For sure. Why not Redux? Why not Redux? Hello, everyone. React context set's correct. It's not state management, it's state delivery, but it can be state delivery of state that you manage elsewhere. It's a tool as a part of state management. It's not state management. So Redux is something that works. It gets the job done. It was amazing when it came out, but I don't want to bash things. And also, sorry, my Slack just opened up. Let me close that. Future-proofing your React codebase means taking out Redux, because the way React will be rendering with concurrent mode and suspense stuff in the future, Redux is not safe for that, or not safe. It's not as compatible with that. Yes, that was my Slack. Sorry about that. I'm new to using React and we completed a project, but I didn't know that we also do support IE9. I mean, if you have to support IE9, like there's little widgets and things here and there, and there's plenty of libraries that can help you with that. That being said, depending on who your customers are, like in a real world example, if it's not necessarily if it's not like an assignment or something, chances are your customers won't be using those browsers. But it's worth, if it's for something for a project, look for libraries. I mean, even Babel has a lot of good transforms for migrating everything to older stuff to be compatible. I have a super concrete idea for a web app I'd like to build, and I'm going to use React or Vue for it. Is there anything you think someone should decide super early on in any project to save time later on? I think you should sketch out a design, like even if it's just like an Excalidraw, something sketchy. Have a design so you can kind of stick to something and go with it. And also not just a visual design, but kind of an architecture design. Like, it's a silly example, but I have a to-do app. In my to-do app, like, yes, I had the design sketched out for where the list was going to go, but I had to figure out, okay, if I want these things synced with this component, do I want them each to have the same parent component? Do I want to wrap a context around it? Figure out how everything will be hooked up as much as you can early on, and then start populating in the code. Try to do as much as you can before you start coding. Hello, Talon03. Oh, thank you so much for the raid, Matthew. Using MobX as my store and context for the component. I needed a way to set IDs after an API call without the re-rendering process. I see that. That makes sense. And so when you're setting the IDs, I assume that's not in a state object then? Do you use SWR with React for fetching data? I don't. Yeah, Excalidraw is very cool. I don't use SWR. I've been meaning to look more into it because a lot of the Next.js crew, they have kind of two versions of SWR called stale while revalidate, but there's different kinds of it. There's like the serving pages kind, and then also the data fetching kind. The data fetching kind makes more sense to me. The SWR kind, I've written blog posts on this. I have thoughts. What do you think about technology teams and projects from not famous countries? I love them. I think there should be more like non-US companies, non-UK companies making cool software, because having more diverse teams and more diverse perspectives makes for apps and stuff that you don't normally get to see, or perspectives and choices you don't normally get to see. Did you use paper prototyping for building the apps? I do tend to. I'm pulling out like my notebook. I do typically have a notebook on the side, and granted, the notebook is not full of genius ideas. Sometimes it's just me sketching out crap, but I do try to sketch out basic things, and sometimes it's as basic as like one time I talked about this is how I would order my buttons and how I want an ideal layout to look like with the check boxes. It's very crude, but I like to start with something as basic as that first, and then once I get beyond the drawing, then I'll sketch it out digitally and then do more than that. Plant UML. Ooh, I don't know that one. I'll have to check that out. You said you were interested in any use cases, so I'll shamelessly repost. I'm working on a React project that has posts that are shared on social media by customers, but Twitter and Facebook don't evaluate JavaScript to get social meta details. Oh, okay. So you're writing an edge handler to call the API directly and return an HTML document. Interesting. That sounds like an intriguing case. I genuinely appreciate it. That's an interesting way of doing it. Huh. Any decent solution to detect when a component mounted and unmounted in React? Use effect. I could literally write a component for this right now. Hang on one second. I will write the code and you can look at it. Let me pull up. I will write a little custom hook for you, and that could be helpful. Is Netlify accepting interns? I want to. Believe me, I have talked about interns multiple times in the past like month. Not yet. but hopefully soon. Hopefully someday. Okay, 1 second, I'm getting a code sandbox up really quick. Plant UML is fantastic. Okay, enough people have mentioned plant UML. I want to look at this. Oh, I've seen this. Yeah, nice. Thank you so much for rating. I appreciate it. Y12YN. I'm not sure how to pronounce your username. I know there's lots of resources to learn web dev out there, but do you recommend one that is the best? If I were just getting started, I would probably do something like, I would probably use something like Scrimba or Code Academy or Free Code Camp. The right way to do it is to do proper server-side rendering. Yeah. Okay, 1 second. I'm going to do this really quick screen share so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, let's just say you have this app component and you want to see if a component is mounted. What you can do is you can import useEffect. Also, if you can't see the text, let me know and I can zoom in. I'll actually zoom in a couple times really quick. Just so that way you can see a little bit better. So we have that. Hello, chat. We'll import useEffect from React, and then what you can do is you can do useEffect inside of here, and then have that run and do like let is mounted equals true, and then return, and then is mounted equals false. And so in a useEffect, this is code that this function runs when the component mounts. And then and that is it, especially when you have this array, the second parameter as an array. It will only run when it mounts, and then that's it. It returns when this component unmounts. And so what I could do is I could wrap this into a custom hook, and I could do like function use is mounted like this. Paste this in here. Is mounted as true, and actually let me do let is mounted, and then I'll do is mounted is true, and then I'll do return is mounted. That's it. And you can call this and be like if is mounted or something. This is how it would work. And so this is how you figure out if a component is mounted or not. And you could put it in a state variable if you wanted to, but because you're just checking if it's mounted or not mounted, then that's all you need to do. You could theoretically also do like not just is mounted, but you could do is current. And so not just is your thing mounted, but you could say, is this the current state of this? Use is current. And then let's just say you want to do some kind of fetch call, and I'll just do fetch ... or whatever, then ... etc. And then inside of here, you want to set some state variable only if this is the current iteration of that, and you could have some state variable in here as well. That's how you could check not just is it mounted, but also is it the current iteration of the component. Because let's just say you have a fetch call that's really, really slow, and then you refresh some state variable. You want that fetch call to not change any states and be out of date with what the component has, but you can't just do promise.cancel or whatever on a fetch call. And so what you would do is you would check, is something current? If it's current, then you make the state change, otherwise you block it, and then that would end that there. Let me go back to is mounted because I see a couple questions on that. Okay, and yes, you could do something like console.log use is mounted or something. You could do something like that. So let me know if that doesn't make sense. Hey, welcome from the raid. After learning Next.js, it's been hard to go back to basic Webpack and Parcel, but I do want to test some new bundlers like ESBuild and Snowpack. Yeah, Snowpack seems really, really cool. I think that stuff is very neat. I think Next.js is very, very cool. It has its pros and its cons. I've really liked it for being able to quickly, rapidly prototype things, have routing set up, build some straightforward applications, but it has enough quirks here and there that I've seen some teams struggle with how it scales because of how the router works. I feel like it's really good. It's really good, but everything has pros and cons. What do I think of Vite? Seems cool, but I haven't used it. I called it Vite for a very long time. What do you think about ethical code reviews? How can we ensure we're not harsh when we criticize each other's code? I think it can depend on your team. One thing that we talked about on my team a lot, we had like team offsites and discussions about this, is how do we prefer to get feedback? And there are some of us, someone like me, where I'm just like, I love direct feedback where you just tell me how it goes. I admit if it's harsh, I will noodle on it forever. And I know it's not personal, I know it's just my code, but I will be thinking about it a lot. And so just know that that's how I receive feedback, but I accept it and appreciate it. Meanwhile, another one of my coworkers, he's just like, my code is not who I am, I don't care, rip it apart, destroy my code, it's fine. Other people say, I would prefer if you wrote stuff down so I can digest it and then we talk in person to see how this code works. And it really varies from person to person, but having those kinds of discussions early really helped our team do better at how we code review each other's work. And it just makes it a more personal experience. I have seen some pretty rough code reviews before where I'm just like, ooh, you aren't even considering this person's perspective. You're just saying their code is bad, and you don't want to do that. You have to figure out how you want to communicate. Should this be better? I would change this here. I would do things there. Because I have seen, like, I was talking to someone once where their teammate refused to accept code changes, where they would say, hey, this is our team's standard for how this if statement should be constructed. And the guy was just like, I'm not going to be taking feedback from you because I'm 20 years your senior. So just know that my code works. That is not a great way to receive feedback. And so just know it's a two-way street. And hopefully everybody can be reasonable. Humans are big variables. Yikes, right? Now, a culture of trust is important. And I think that's why, especially in the open source community, it's important to have like trust amongst maintainers and everything. Do you use Streamlabs or something for your broadcast UI? I mean, yes. The chat on the right, I applied CSS so that way I could use the Mona Lisa font, which is also what I use here and what I use in my editor. And then the confetti background, I drew a bunch of lines in Photoshop. Voila. Oh, thank you for the bits. How do you know when a React dev goes from junior to mid to senior? Hello, Lindsay. Yeah, he might be 20 years my senior, but that's why he's not my boss. Ooh, spicy. It's hard to say when you're junior, mid to senior because, like, it depends on the scope of work that you've taken on. If you're just doing individual tasks here and there to just get the job done, that's kind of a junior mindset. And then as you do mid, it's more improving the team a little bit more. And as you do senior, it's scaling the team more, and it keeps going. But it's all about the scale of your work. Which mechanical keyboard switch do you like best for coding? I don't like Cherry MX switches as much. I guess I like Browns of the Cherry MX line, but yeah, Xylence. I use Xylence most often, and then I also, I like Zelios in general. And I like box whites, kale box whites, when I'm wanting to be clacky. Does Netlify support the Next.js 10 image component? We do, but I don't recommend it. Honestly, like we do, but I don't recommend it. And that's something that came with some of the updates this week that I talked about earlier on the stream, which I will post the blog post again because it's fun. And so I'll paste in here. But I purposely didn't add it to the list of things we support because yes, we can. Yes, we can. But I don't recommend doing it that way. I would use an image tag and do your optimization in something like Cloudinary, especially because that's free. Cloudinary is very free for most people. Having your images in your code base is fine, but it's a lot of bloat, and I think it's a better practice to do that kind of optimization elsewhere and just run scripts for things. I've always found that I would do X statements are best when they're given with genuine statements about lessons learned. Yeah, for sure. Hello, Lindsay. Also, Jemberly in the chat is the mastermind behind a lot of Node things and Next things that make it run on Netlify, and she is great. Kiwis are cool. I have a box of kiwis right here that's gonna go on a board sooner or later, but I gotta move first and then they will. Amberly, heyo. Yeah, there's too many of you with the Lees, or the Burlees, I guess, at the end. Amberly, you were in my dream last night, actually. I was, I think it had to do with your iPod. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. Amberly just did a bunch of really cool stuff with her iPod, and I was thinking about it. This chat about image is so reassuring. Literally working on a project this week and decide to keep optimization logic and decisions in Cloudinary. Yeah, no, I think that's the way to go. I really think that's the way to go. I understand why they added it to the framework as a business tool for them, the folks maintaining it, but I don't think it's the best way to optimize your images. Yes, people are asking about iPods. Amberly did some amazing engineering to get a really old classic iPod working, and it's very cool, and she's been posting pictures and stuff at work. You changed the battery in your iPad Classic 3rd Gen. Yeah, that's so fun. You still have the iPod Nano? Nice. Okay, I know you're joking about the Zune Memod 88, but the Zune was a solid piece of hardware. It's a shame they killed it. Yeah, like can someone bring the Zune back? I know there's people who are bringing Pebble watches back. Someone bring the Zunes back. I had some smile on my face when I saw the Netlify mail about the no config Next.js. Heyo, that's what we worked on. Oh yeah, let me actually paste that blog post in the chat if you want to check it out. My dad was on the Zune train and refused to go to the iPod and then had to give it up. Ugh. I'm sorry. Yeah, Pebbles were great. I actually still have my Pebble watch. I made way back in the day, I made an insults generator so you can get insults on the go and stuff like that. But yeah, no, they call themselves Rebels, but it's spelled like Pebble, only with an R. Haha. But yeah, they fully support Pebble watches and recycle them, and it's a whole community that I just discovered in the past week. I think it's awesome. I didn't have a Zune, but the software was used for MP3 management with early Windows phones, I believe. I think you're right. I never owned a Windows phone, but I did intern at Microsoft way back in the day, and as interns, we got to test things on a Windows phone. And I didn't actually have a smartphone until probably way too late in the game. I didn't have one until end of 2013, early 2014, which is kind of hard to believe, but now that I've always have a phone with me, but it was very fun having a Windows phone for that internship. The Pebble CO is actively hostile towards Windows phones. Why can't we all get along? I remember when the Pebble came out, I thought I'd never need a smartwatch, and now I have a Garmin, and I don't think I could go back. Really? I haven't tried any of the Garmin ones. I have a real watch. Well, it's a Swatch, and it works and gets the job done. But I could see it being useful. I don't know. Thank you so much for gifting a sub. I appreciate that. What do you recommend for privacy website analytics? It depends on what you want to use, or what your platform is, or how you host it and stuff. There's so many open source things. I struggle to recommend paid services, but watches are pretty neat for fashion. Yeah, I was kind of sad. I don't know if any of you follow drop.com. I sell a lot of my keycaps on there, and so I get their announcements, but they're sunsetting the watches portion of the website. I was kind of bummed. I never bought a watch on there because I have kind of dinky wrists, and so their watches were always a little too big for me. Yeah, I know, mass drop back in the day. But yeah, now they're doing only audiophile and keyboard stuff. They're getting rid of everyday carry, they're getting rid of outdoors, and they're getting rid of watches. It's a shame. I'm sure it's like business focus reasons and stuff, but they just announced that like they're getting rid of knives and everything. From a business perspective, I get it. From a community perspective, that kind of sucks. Yeah, I get it. And I still buy from them. I definitely got some keyboard supplies from them yesterday, and so it's not like I'm gonna boycott them for that reason. But man, seeing them get rid of those categories made me bummed out a little, especially because they also dropped like board games. They used to have board games on there. They used to have a bunch of DIY hardware stuff. There were a lot of cool things, but I could see how they want to like refine their focus as a business and then maybe add more later once that has improved. I wonder how fast something like Drop is going to spring up to fill the void. For real, right? Because I like the group by model a ton, but yeah, they don't do that as much. Oh yeah, shipping and imports, for sure. Keycaps on Prime, good luck. You could, Pimp My Keyboard has some good keycaps that you can get, and like 1UP keyboards. There's some good sites here and there. KBD fans, Kono store. Will there be some coding soon? We can switch over to coding. I did a little bit earlier, but I was thinking I might try to throw together a Next app so you can see how stuff works. I want to update my Next.js starter project, and maybe I could just do that on the stream and you could see how it works. I was always confused when Dropbox Geekhack. Yeah, that was an interesting buy. It was an interesting buy to buy Geekhack, but now that they're going all in on keyboards, I get it. Do you have any experience with Flutter? I haven't played with it. I struggle to try Google products because I'm afraid they'll sunset them. And so I don't know. Oh, thank y'all for liking my starter. I've been meaning, so here, I'll talk through the updates that I want to add. So let me pull it up on my screen really quick. Google Reader, never forget. I know, right? Okay, so I have my next Netlify starter, and it's truly just a very base project. And if you click this button, deploy to Netlify, hype train! Thank you so much for the bit score, Bob. I appreciate it. And so anyway, you click deploy to Netlify, it automatically clones to your GitHub, and then it deploys the site to Netlify. And it's a very basic site that looks a little something like... Is it loading? My internet's been kind of crappy today. Ooh, actually, am I frozen? Can you all see me? Oh no. Is my internet out or are we back? You see me? Okay. My stream is frozen, but you can see me, so great. I'll just roll with it and hope that it's fine. Some people can see me and some people can't. The screen was white, yeah. I think my internet freaked out a little bit there. Okay, let's try it. Oh, well, there you go, it loads, so it might have just been a blip on my end. Anyway, it's just a basic welcome to my app. It's a super basic thing, but there's something that we don't need anymore, and that is, in this netlify.toml, we have this Netlify plugin, Next.js. This is something that it's the essential Next.js plugin where it allows you to do all of the server-side rendering stuff with Netlify functions, all of those extra features, but it auto-installs now. And so if you were to make a new site with this starter, you don't actually need these lines. And so I'm going to pull this up, actually, and here, let me switch over to this so I can pull up my editor and everything and not just have you watch me navigate around on my computer. Yeah, we can update this. Ooh, thanks for using the bits. Look at all those flags. Did I order the bear keeb? I did not. Hype train! Thank you. Oh, you were at CodePen. Yeah, I did used to be at CodePen. Good times. I haven't been at CodePen for a little while now, but I liked working there. Sorry about the noises. Getting the starter up. Is that a Cheerios hoodie? It is. I used to work at General Mills for a little bit, so got all the cereal goodie. I remember you talking about making a newsletter sponsorship management app. I never actually made it, but I did kind of the next best thing of using a spreadsheet, and it's gotten the job done so far. I can show you really quick, actually. Let me pull up this while I'm pulling code. So I'll let my code run really quick. And so if you want to go to my newsletter, it's casadoo.co/newsletter, and it has the interview question of the week and stuff. And you can also, I added this little thing, want to sponsor this newsletter? And so I made this page where it talks about the stats and stuff for the newsletter. And it talks about sponsorship formats, and then this is where the spreadsheet comes in. You can view and book available slots here. And so here are the slots that have been booked, and there's one that's pending, things that are available. And then this goes to a Google form, and then in that Google form, companies can say that they want to sponsor. And so that's basically what I have done until I do something more complex, and it gets the job done. I am a teacher K through 12, and we're trying to bring coding to the school for the first time. Nice. Ivan GTV or Ivan GTV, I'm not sure how to pronounce. I would say if you're doing it for the first time ever, I don't know how old the students would be, but I would actually start with something like Scratch first. And then if you want to do like actual written code stuff, probably Python as a good starter. That would be my opinion. I think it would be good to do something not JavaScript as the first language myself. Some might agree with me, and then folks can switch over to JavaScript later. So anyway, now that I'm in my code base, I can take out these dev dependencies because we've got that auto installing thing, and then I can also go into the netlify.toml and take this out. And that'll update the starter. Do I need to do anything else? Ooh, I did add some of these. You know, I don't need to keep these comments in there. Okay. Let me see, git status. It's just those. Remove plugin for auto install. Boom! And then git push. And voila! You have all watched me contribute to open source by making that go away. And so now in here, there we go. In here, now that is gone, and this next Netlify starter is building, and it's using the latest version of Next and stuff. And if you'd like to get to it, you can go to my GitHub. I'll post the link in here. The short link for it is cast.run/next starter, That might be easier to remember. Vogue and Code has a nice Learning Python for Kids book. Oh, nice! I'll have to check that out. I remember seeing that she wrote one, but I haven't seen it. What would you use CSS in a currently new Next.js project? I would use CSS modules. Honestly, that's what I use, and that's actually what I have that built into this starter. Let me zoom in so you can see the side here. I have one component, the footer.js, that uses CSS modules, just so you can see how it works. It's very basic styles, but yeah, I'm very, very pro CSS modules myself. Is your spreadsheet inspired by Dense Discovery system? I don't know. I've seen Dense Discovery's like sponsorship page, but I haven't seen the spreadsheet part. But I'm sure it's incredibly similar because I'm not that original. Let's see, technical question about Netlify. If I have a personal site with no build step and then a list of personal project repos which should be linked, hype train. So I have a personal project repos which should be linked from the personal site as subroutes. Should we just deploy each different repo and use redirects from the personal site? Yeah, that's probably how I would do it. Yeah, like I plan on making a separate sponsorship section, I think, and I'm just going to build a redirect rule for it and have it linked to the different site. So yeah, you can do that easily. You could do either a redirect or a rewrite. And so if you set a redirect to be of code, I think 200, that turns it into a rewrite. And so it rewrites the URL instead of just navigating to a different URL as well. Do you have experience with React Native? I haven't dabbled in React Native since it first came out, and it was buggy as crap. I know it is a lot better now, but I haven't played with it enough in recent years to have a good opinion. What are we doing tonight? I was having dinner. We were just talking about some Next stuff, some React stuff, you know. Do you have any good examples of larger scaled open source React and Vue apps? I often see small example projects, but I have no idea how to do larger projects. There are many. I guess I would have to figure out, like I could give you a good Next.js one really quickly just because I know of one off the top of my head, but kind of depends on what you want to see. Is Netlify free for dev portfolio websites? Yes. Look at the pricing plan. It's very generous. And I'm not saying this just as an employee. Even before I worked there, I never paid for Netlify, and they very actively basically tell your bosses to make your companies go on Netlify, because the more companies go onto our platform, the more free stuff we can give away. And there's more free stuff coming, which I'm very excited about and can't talk about. Depending on if certain sales goals and stuff happens, more free stuff is coming, and it's very exciting. And that's all I can say. But yes, you can put your dev portfolio site on there for free. You can even put your startup site and sell stuff for free, which a lot of platforms don't let you make money on their free tier, but Netlify does, and I think that's awesome. Thanks for saying my memes are fire. Word. Can you remind me what you recommended for state management in Next.js app? I use React Context and then useReducer or use state depending on the context around app.js. And here, let me actually pull up a good example of that, and it might answer the other question about an app that scales too. So 1 second, let me pull it up. Free stuff, small spoiler. Yeah, that's truly all I can say. Just know that when I heard we were giving some of this stuff away, I was like, what? And that's about as far as I got with that. Because I'm not allowed to say everything, but know that I want to. I'm worried about the bees. Heyo. Also, the open source license is amazing. Yes, I love that we do that. If you have an open source project, as long as you say it's hosted on Netlify, you can tell us and you'll get the pro plan for free, and it's awesome. They have an open source plan dedicated to that. You have your view portfolio on Netlify. Nice. Insert Oprah what meme? I love Oprah memes, man. It's so good. Okay, 1 second. Let me make sure I've got everything up. And I'm sorry. I don't know how many times I have to close Slack, but man, those notifications keep breaking through, and I'm sorry about that. If I weren't coding, what would I be doing? Probably making furniture. What's Netlify about? It's a place where you can host your websites, bruh. And it's great. And not just host websites, there's other features too, and I could go into that if you really want me to, but I want to pull up other stuff. Hey, Alex. Okay, so I'm going to pull up Netlify Explorers, or Jamstack Explorers hosted on Netlify. This is a learning website that my team made, where on Jamstack Explorers you can take various online courses. We have a few on there, and it's all completely for free. I have a Next.js one, for example, and we try to regularly add courses. I think this Nuxt and Strappy course was added last week, and then this Angular Dynamic Data one was added the week before that. So we try to add things somewhat regularly. It's built with Next.js. All of the videos are actually processed with Cloudinary. One thing that's actually kind of cool with it, I'm sorry about the Slack noises, is if I were to pull up like this introduction, what is Next.js? Let me mute it really quick. This whole intro, what is Next.js, as well as the outro, where if I were to go here, I have this like let's code thing. At the end, it does like this goes away, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, next video. That's all done in Cloudinary, and it's really, really cool. I think it's super, super neat, and so then it goes on to the next video. Anyway, we do a lot of Cloudinary stuff, lots of serverless function stuff, hosted on Netlify, interesting things, and it's all open source. And so you can go to github.com/netlify/explorers to see how it works. You can see some examples of how we've set things up. And so we have pages, hooks, context, whatever. And so, for example, on our app.js, we have some context providers. And in those context providers, I just realized how small that is. In these context providers, this is where we pull in various bits of data. And so, ooh, look at that GitHub. I'm able to jump to the file. Wow, what a day. That's probably not new, but I haven't used it before. But anyway, we have a GraphQL query that pulls in from Sanity. We have a CMS setup where we have all of the stages pulled in. We use useEffect. So if you'd like to see how all of this works, this is a larger scale Next.js project that we've built and are maintaining and are adding all kinds of interesting things to it. So check it out. Allie, thank you so much for rating. I appreciate it. How do we get the free pro open source thing? Netlify open source plan. Watch me Google. There it is. Open source plan policy. If you want to be on the open source plan, check it out. You can learn more about it. Azure storage went down this week and no one noticed. Plenty of people noticed. I got so many messages on Discord and stuff of people talking about the Azure going down. Azure's cool. We actually do some Azure things in this code base. Also, my husband works on Azure, so I guess I'm a little biased. Can I make a quick demo of Next.js Context API and useReducers? Sure. Do I use Next.js for all of my projects? No, I sometimes just use React. If it's going to be a single page application, I'll use React, and then for some things too, like for example with React Router, I like React Router so much better than Next's router, and there's pros and cons to both. Like the fact that I don't have to configure a router, I can just add pages to the pages directory in Next is really nice. But if I want to share states, for example, across just 2 or 3 routes, not the whole application, React router is nice where I could just wrap a context object around those few routes, and it's just, that's how it works. But with Next.js, I have to wrap it around my entire application. And I've talked to their team about it. They're wanting to improve it. I don't know when that's going to happen, but that's one of the reasons why I might use a vanilla React one. I'm excited about Remix because it's supposed to kind of marry the two and be the best of both worlds. I was talking with Ryan Florence, one of the guys who's building it, this past week, and we got it working on Netlify, yay, and just kind of talk through some things. And I think that might be a good middle solution, but we'll see. I've been checking out Vue and Nuxt. I can use that course. Nice. Oh, hey, Jackie. Yes, I do stream. Welcome. What was that monospace font? It's Mono Lisa. Azure Active Directory went down and it was great. My entire day was supposed to be working on it. Free day off. Do I use Create React app for my React projects? Yes, I do. How do you make sure context doesn't force a bunch of re-renders? So React is pretty smart. Who knew? And so I try to be as discerning as possible with everything, but with avoiding the re-renders in particular. I try to, if I have multiple contexts, I try to not just wrap everything in every context and use it as global state wherever I can, but try to use smaller context objects throughout an application to only share what's needed. And luckily, React does a pretty good job of diffing state. And so by separating out state variables and separating out contexts a little bit, you can avoid the unnecessary re-renders more. Unfortunately, that is harder in Next.js because of how things are organized, which is why I don't use it for absolutely everything. But yeah, I'm sorry for just saying be discerning and leaving it at that, but it's kind of true. It's trying not to make state changes unnecessarily. Do I have a YouTube? I don't, because editing videos is a pain. Sometimes I'll repost streams over on YouTube, and so I have that there. And I have old YouTube videos of me lip syncing to Les Mis and stuff, but I don't have an active YouTube channel, no. Why not use Redux at that point if you need multiple global contexts? Because Redux is built in a way that doesn't fit the React model moving forward. Like the React team, the core team, says you shouldn't use Redux because of how it works, because of how it handles rendering, and because for concurrent mode, for the new server components, for all of these other things, it suggests they specifically say don't use Redux. It's just not going to be concurrent mode safe in the future. I understand why people use Redux, but if you set up context and reducers in a good way, you don't have to worry about that. How do you comfort a JavaScript bug? You console it. Hey! Your video about open source maintainers opening RFCs. Oh, thank you. That was fun. I was thinking about building a site to experiment with video, because there's so many video APIs and stuff on there and out there. And I was thinking it might be cool to make it where, let's just say I don't want my videos on TikTok, or or I'm tired of people saying like, where was the tweet for that? And making just a site where people can scroll through the videos if they don't have a TikTok or something. Plus it links to the tweet where that video was posted so they can share it if they want. Just have it be like a store for that. Although a Twitter moment could also work, so it's not necessarily necessary, but it could be a fun project to build. My teeth are like light mode? Thanks, I brushed them. Why did the React class component feel relieved? Because it was now off the hook. Ew. I bet you feel pretty classy making that joke, am I right? Any thoughts on the Julia programming language? I have none. Is Netlify considering Svelte kit support? Yes. And I'm hoping I can work on some of that. I just have not had any time. Can I show you Next.js context useReducers? Yes, I'll do that in just a second. Twitter Moments feels like they'll move to be an enterprise feature. So yeah, it feels like it's dying, but some people still use it. Oh no. What's the NFT hot take? They're bad for the environment. And I can screenshot your JPEG that you supposedly own now. What now? I think it's just a way for rich people to get richer. And like, yes, if you're an artist, yay, you can get paid. But until it is better for any better for the environment. Right now it's so bad that I don't want to contribute to that. How many meetings do you have in an average week? If you were to take an average of the past few weeks, way too many. But it varies. Next week I have probably less. Some days I have about a half day of meetings, and then other days I don't have many meetings at all. Next week. This week I have lots, so it varies. NFTs are legal tax evasion. Did Netlify use Bootstrap as a CSS framework? I don't think we use it anywhere. So many jokes, Josh. You're very funny. Ha 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 ha. So dumb. Okay. Let me show you an example of Next.js and context and stuff, because I don't want to forget. Okay. And actually, really quick, I've made an example of this before. Before I reinvent the wheel, let me just pull one up, and so I'll show you from the ground up, but I've also built one of these, and so I'll show you that too. Okay, so first of all, I do that here. You can check it out. NFTs are a great exit plan for the platform's founders. At the moment, they're about to go bust with all the IP. The moment a rich guy owning a $65 million NFT buys the platform to keep his investment alive. Ah, spicy takes. Okay, let me rearrange my screen really quick so I can build a demo and you can see it on the side. Ooh, I don't know if you heard that. That was my husband sneezing in the background. Sorry, I'm setting up some stuff on my end. And I also accidentally broke something, so 1 second. It's always how it is. Oh, so loud it shook my windows. I know, right? Hey, we do not have a big enough apartment to be able to disguise all of the human sounds that exist. Okay. 1 second. Okay. I think I'm all set now. So what I'm going to do, let me just minimize things, maximize things, do all the things. And now I'm going to show my screen. You're trying to read what's on my hoodie? Cheerios. It's not that fancy. Do I have a dog? I do not. I am allergic. Okay. Boom. So we're back to the starter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click deploy to Netlify. I'm going to start a new project. This seems fine. Yes. Let me call this, I'll call it a next context example because I'm not creative. Yeah, I know, I'm very allergic to dogs. I like to pet them, but I do not touch them for that reason. But I do have the Charmander, yes. Okay, cool. So this site deploy is in progress. I'm going to rename it, and I'll call it a next context example. Cool. And so theoretically, if I click on this, oh, it's not done building yet. Okay, I'll just let it build. Yeah, it hasn't been deployed yet. Okay, well, while it's being deployed, that means I can go to my GitHub. Would you rather use classes or functions in React? Always functions, don't use classes. Can you do SSR with Apollo and GraphQL? I have almost always used client-side Apollo GraphQL stuff. Is there a library people use to generate a string of readable random words? Yes, I think it's actually called Friendly Words. Friendly Words NPM? Yeah. I use this one for all of that. I've used it in so many demos. Highly recommend it. Friendly Words is very, very useful. Okay, we got our next context example. It's not done building yet. Why did it fail? Uh-oh, that's not a good thing. Ouch does not exist. Yes, it does. Wait a minute. That's not a good thing. Oh, it didn't auto-install. Ooh, I'm gonna poke my team about that. That should have auto-installed. I wonder if it's because of how my starter is set up. That's fine. I'll just redeploy. Nothing like live coding to find bugs. Okay, we're all good there, we're all good there. I'm going to, oh, nope, deploys, trigger deploy. Okay, is Netlify serverless? Yes, it is. Okay. Also, one thing that's new is we have linkable log lines now, so let's just say I wanted to like link all of this to all of you or to someone on my team. You can do that now. It was a cool little feature that our team made. What? What did I break? This has never happened to me before on this starter project. Oh no. Well, that's not a good thing. Huh. How's this starter app doing? Okay, this one's fine. If I go to the starter, everything works fine, right? Great. Cool. I'm going to... I wonder if I broke something. Oh gosh, I hope not. Well, let's find out. I'm gonna delete this site and start over. Sorry, everybody. What do you mean by what does my setup look like? Let me know. And I'm also going to delete this repo and start over. And then if it doesn't work a second time, then something is really bad. And I will be reporting it to the authorities. Okay, cool. Donezo. Now, if I go back to my GitHub, I go to my next Netlify starter, it's built, it works, nothing's wrong. I want to deploy to Netlify again. This should be fine. I'm gonna call it next context example again. What is my physical setup? What is currently in front of me? I got my keyboard, I got my wrist rest, I've got a Microsoft Pro IntelliMouse, I have a Stream Deck, I have a headphone thingy, I have a CalDigit Thunderbolt dock so that way I can connect both my Mac as well as my PC to the same accessories. I have a Blue Yeti microphone, got my camera here, I got a light there. That's generally my my setup here. Okay, I want to see. Interesting. Okay, I think I know what's wrong, which is fine. Everything is fine. I have to tell my team about a bug. That's okay. I know exactly what the bug is, and so I can work with this. How do you switch between your Mac and your PC? Yeah, I swap one cable. Luckily, it's just one cable, though. Dang it, it did fail. Oh man. Okay, I know why it's failing, but that's really annoying. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I know what I'm gonna do. 1 second. I'm pulling something up on my other monitor really quick. In my next Netlify starter that I showed before, I think because of how I configured the starter, I need to keep what I had in there. And so I'm going to reset what I did in here. Get status. Yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to keep the plugins in here. Okay, sorry about this. I think I need to. The bug is either on my end or on their end, but I can fix it on my end right now by putting my plugin back. And I know what the problem is, but whew, I'm glad I caught it on the stream instead of someone telling me that it stopped working for them. But I'm gonna add my dev dependencies back in here. I don't like that I had to do that though. Because it should have auto-installed, but I think because my next Netlify starter existed before the auto-install part, I think the auto-install detected it and was just like, oh, this site already exists, we don't need to auto-install it, when it should. So I'm just gonna put this back so it doesn't have to auto-install. I think that's what I have to do. Oh my gosh, okay. No! Come back. Okay, this, and then come back here. This. Yeah, I think I messed up my my config. Okay. I'm going to talk to the team about this. This is fine. This is fine. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so I'll talk to them about that to make sure that that isn't something other people run into. Luckily, it's only been released for 2 days, and so the fact that I'm figuring this out now is a good thing. Okay, so that means that site here, this is expected to fail. And I'm going to just delete this site really quick. Yeah, thanks for all y'all watching me debug this. Okay, so now that we're back in business there, we're back in business here. It's still building, but it should be done in about about 30 seconds there. I'm going to do this again, but now I have the plugin back, and I'm not going to depend on the auto install. And I want to make sure that I think I did make a new repo for it, and so let me get rid of that repo again. This one. Cassidy, you fool. Didn't anyone tell you not to try to write code live? So silly. Okay. We're good. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the "this is fine" meme is yep, that's how I'm feeling. My goodness. Okay. I have fixed things. Let's try this again, people. This should not be this difficult. This is what I get for trying to be smart. Next context example. Also, if you want to learn about this, let me go cast run. I wrote a blog post on using React context with Next.js. Somewhere. This one. And so if you'd like to see a blog post on the subject, I have written a blog post on this subject. So anyway, there we go. Thanks for saying I'm not a fool. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to change the site name. I'm going to say next context example. I'm going to put that in here. It should just work. It just has to finish deploying. If you'd like to watch the logs, you can. Look at that. It's beautiful. Look at all these emojis. So colorful. Processing, doing all the things. Why are functions greater than classes? Functions are, it's all about being modular with your code. Classes kind of forces you to do a lot of the lifecycle stuff inside of the one file, but you can reuse logic better with React hooks. And that's just where things are going. The only thing that you can't do with hooks is error boundaries, but even then I think they're working on that right now. Gundalix, thank you so much for subscribing. I appreciate it. But yay, it compiled. But you're gonna want to use hooks. If you like classes, you can, but they're going to fully deprecate them in one of the new versions. Maybe not the next version, maybe not the version after that, but it will be. Classes are going to be fully deprecated. Okay, cool. We got our next example. Wow, who knew setting up a project would be that? Okay, so I'm gonna go here. Yeah, fully deprecate. Am I right? Use functions. Don't use classes. Okay, we got the next nullify starter under my next context example. I'm going to copy this. I'm trying to use the GitHub UI more because in the GitHub UI, as I've been using the command line this entire time, but I like how it does diffing better. And so I'd like to be better at that. But until then, I'm just going to do this. Because I like being able to see the things even though I use the command line for everything. Okay. Cool, so now in this next context example, I am going to open this file up. Open folder, next context example, and this is what I'm going to be coding on. Okay, cool. Put this on the side. We're going to have our pages. Voila. Beyond compare diff is the king of diffs. Ooh, I'll have to check it out. It says netlifriend. Oh yeah, I work there, so it says netlifriend. That's why. Okay, so we have our context example repo in the README. I'm just going to take out some of these things that aren't relevant. First of all, in my let me zoom out a tiny bit. in my site settings, I can get a new deploy status badge. So I'm going to copy that and replace that right here inside of my context example. And I'm going to just say next context example, and I'm just gonna take these things out. Actually, I should keep some of this. I'm going to do next context example. So right here, this is the deploy to Netlify button. And so I'm going to do next context. By doing this, then people will be able to clone and do the same thing that I just did, hopefully with none of the problems that I just ran into. Okay. Boom. All right, context example readme, done. Now let's actually write the code. So we've got our index.js, which is very basic. Let me actually open up my terminal. And let me do, let me npm install really quick. You can do exclamation point editor if you want to see stuff. I use WebStorm, but Alt-Tab to VS Code diff to commit. Nice. Yeah, no, like I have one coworker where she does all of her stuff in the terminal, but just diffing she does in GitHub. And at first I was like, oh, that's kind of funky. But then when I saw how rich her diffs were, I was like, oh, dang. That is so much cleaner than the terminal. Okay, now if I do npm run dev in here. Oh my gosh. Did I mess something up again? I think I did. I definitely did. For some reason, half the time when I open my computer, local doesn't work, and it's very annoying. And so I might just code this blind, which is fine. Okay, so we have our index.js and we have our app.js. In our app.js underscore app.js, this is where all of your like global things will live. And so we're going to wrap the entire app with this. What I'm going to do outside of pages, I have a components folder. I might make a folder called context. And inside of this context folder, I'm just going to make a new file and I'm just going to call this state.js. We could call it whatever we want, but this is what I'm going to call it. The only thing I'm missing at GitHub is the three-way diff. Ooh, yeah, for sure. Is there any app or website you use to find open source repos to contribute to? Yes, but I can't remember them off the top of my head right now. But that's the thing. Don't I use TypeScript? I don't. Okay, so first of all, we want to import use context and create context. I don't like the order that I did that in, but whatever. From React. Like this. Let me zoom out a tiny bit. I want to do create context first because alphabet. Okay. So first of all, we import those. Wow. Okay, and then we also want to export function app wrapper is what I'll call it. And then inside of this app wrapper is where everything is going to live, and we also want to take in the children of this app wrapper. From React. Yeah, that's the next new JavaScript framework. Open sourced. Oh yeah, that's a good one. So anyway, inside of this app wrapper, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a context provider that wraps everything. And so first of all, with create context, I'll just do const app context equals create context like this. And then I'm also going to use that app context. So I'm going to do export function use app context. And then inside of here, this is where I'll just do use context. So return use context of app context. So this is the general structure of how I would set this up. And you can have as many of these as you want. And I could do like let... you can add some state thing. I'll first return inside of here. We'll do app context.provider. And then inside of here will be children. Boom! Now I have a value in here. inside of this value is an object. So it's first of all, there's one set of curly braces just to escape it into JavaScript. And then inside of here is some object. And so I could do fish equals fishy like this. Now anything inside of this app context has access to this fish object. If that makes sense. Okay. Yes, I could do an arrow function. I'm just doing it like this for readability right now. So now when I want to use this app context, what I'll do is I'll go over to app_app.js, and then inside of here, I'll do an import app wrapper from, and then where is this? Context, and then state.js. Yeah? Yeah. That. It can live wherever it's needed. And then I wrap it inside of here. And so I'll do app wrapper around this, and then I'll put the component inside of that. Why is it mad at me? It's not formatting. There we go. So anyway, that is how it works. I name my wrappers after rappers. I import everything into Ice Cube or Snoop Dogg. Nice. That's fun. So inside of index.js or whatever page you want, you could import your context. And you know what? Actually, I'm going to make a thing for this. I'm going to do absolute importing context /star. And then in here, I'm just going to copy this, but it'll be context. So now I don't have to do the .. / thing. I can just do the @context right here. Clean, right? And so now any files in here, if it's subroutes or anything, can do that. And so if I want to actually use my my use app context hook, I could do the same thing from before, use app context from, and then context, and then state.js like that. And so if I wanted to do let fish or let context object is equal to use app context like this, now I should get something where if I console.log context object like this, I'll get the thing that says that has the fish is fishy right here. That makes sense? I'm glad that you think that's clean, but yeah, that's generally how it works. And so I could set up some state variables, I could access anything, and I could get that. And I'm gonna try to run this locally again. I don't know why it does that on my computer, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Because I have my node module set up. If I do, maybe I need to npm install -g next. Maybe that'll help. We'll see if that works. If it doesn't, it's fine. Otherwise, I'll just deploy it and we can see it if it works live. Ben, thank you so much for gifting subs. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, let me see. npm run dev. Did that work? No, man, for some reason, my script is just not liking it. Module React is not found, but I installed it. It's right here. Truly, this is my computer's fault and not the code's fault. So, let's just deploy it live. Okay, so we're going to be looking for fish in the logs when we run our application. And actually, you know what? Instead of doing this get started by editing, we could be just like context object, and then I'll do context object like this. I did do npm install already. So would you use this in place of Redux or in conjunction with it? I would use it in place of Redux. And so again, context is just like a portal where any components, any parts of your application that calls use app context get what's ever in this value right here. And so it's more of a transportation mechanism rather than state management. I would set up a reducer, I would set up state variables and stuff in here to make it actually state management. Do I need to stringify the context object? Probably. Yeah, that's a good call. What is it? JSON.stringify? Let me check. JSON.stringify. Just to check. Yeah, that works. Okay. Very good call, because otherwise we would have just seen object.object. Cool, okay. And here I am using the terminal again instead of using the GitHub UI. It's fine, it's fine. Add app context. Okay, so I'll push it, we'll deploy it, and we should see if it works. Well, I thought it might be my Node version, but that's not it. It truly happens like every other time I run npm anything, npm run anything on my computer. So something's borked, and I'm very sure it's my own fault. And so I'm just not going to worry about it right now. Okay, so now the site is building again. And theoretically, it should be a pretty quick build because it's just a few other pages. npm install yarn. Heyo, it still happens with yarn too. There's something about like my dependencies not being installed properly, and I don't understand, because if I go into my folder here, LMNOP, QRS, there it is, R. React is installed. It's installed right there, but it says it's not. It makes no sense. I don't understand. It's fine. It'd be cool if there was a plugin where I could like right click on this and be just like, run this script. I'm sure that exists. Okay, it's published. Next context example. Do we see it? Look at that! It says fish and fishy! So anyway, that's how it works. The end. That's how you set up React context in Next.js. Haha! Might be a peer dependency issue. No, it had nothing to do with the plugin, because that's something that I've had issues with pre-plugin. It has nothing to do with the plugin. Cool. Well, now that works. Instead of doing fish, let's do something a little bit more real. So instead of just getting fish and fishy, I'll do a quick useReducer example. Now we're getting a little hairy. Should be fun though. Okay. Fish aren't real. Confirmed. Correct. Okay. Do y'all understand how useReducer works? Because I could explain that a little bit too, but I don't want to explain things that you already know. Haha, fish. Please, yes? Whew, okay. Let's go. I love explaining how reducers work. I gave a talk on this yesterday. I genuinely enjoy it. And you know, if you keep running the exact same command, something will change, right? Because it says React wasn't found. That doesn't make sense. I'm just going to try manually installing a couple things, because otherwise, you know, I could do this in my browser terminal. I don't want to. Yeah, you know what? I'll do this in a code sandbox. Actually, I did this in a code sandbox yesterday. Oh, and my whole lesson is still here. Cool. I'm just going to recreate this entire lesson from scratch. And so you can all see it. this is vanilla React rather than Next.js, but it's a similar concept, and while my computer is being dumb, I can explain it. Also, let me see if this finished installing. I just want to see if that fixed it, because if it did, then... Oh my gosh, it fixed it! What? Really? That shouldn't have fixed it. I was just trying it to be dumb. Did that really fix it? Now I'm just mad. Okay, well, whatever that was, it's fine now. I guess I'll do this locally. Bye, thanks, hey, it's LGG. Okay, cool. So let's talk about useReducers now that it works for real. Oh, how silly. Am I right? Okay, so if I said fish is poop and saved it, yep, now it saves automatically. Okay. That shouldn't have fixed it. And I'm upset. But I don't care enough to figure out why. Yeah, it works, but why? Okay. So, I'm going to do an example in here, and you'll see it happening live on the page. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And instead of a P, I'm going to call this an H2, so it's a little bit bigger. And take out this description class like that. Okay, so you have the context fish is poop, because we're professionals here. Okay, so let's just say, I'm gonna pull some of this stuff over here. Hey, I got here. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's such a pain. Okay, let's just say I have an array, and I say let array is equal to numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? It's just a very, very simple array. I'll actually put it inside of my object right here. And now alongside of this array, I make a function, and I'll say let add is equal to a function that takes in x and y, and it returns x plus y, like that. So we have array and we have add. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let sum is equal to array.reduce, and then add and 0. If I were to put sum inside of here, if I were to do sum is sum or whatever, or I guess instead of fish, I'll do fish is sum. What do you expect to show up right here instead of poop? I'm gonna save it and you'll see 15! It shows 15. So it doesn't show the array, it shows the results of this array.reduce. And now I'll explain why it shows 15. Now, what it does with array.reduce, it's very similar to array.map. It's just like map, except it does something where on the first iteration of this, it's kind of like a loop, it does 0 plus 1, where this 0 right here is added to 1 right here. And then on the next invocation, it does 1 plus 2. And it's not doing 1 plus 2 right here, but rather the previous invocation plus 2, the next value right here. And so the next one will be 3 plus 3, where it's the sum of 1 plus 2 plus 3. And so as you can imagine, then the next one is 6 plus 4, because we're adding 4 to the sum, and then at last it's 10 plus 5. And so those are all the different invocations that happen inside of this array.reduce. So it loops while keeping the last result as the first parameter. Correct, Corwin TV. That's correct. So is it weird I'm having a great time watching a stream about Next and Context API? No. Okay, so that's how these work. And so as you can imagine, if I were to change this from 0 to 10 and then save it, then it starts at 25, because then it, instead of 0 and 1, it starts at 10 plus 1, and then it's 11 plus 2, and then it's 13 plus 3, and then 16 plus 4, and then 20 plus 5. And so this is that initial value that gets added to the whole thing. And so it pays attention to the previous invocation and then adds to it. So that's how reduce works at like a mathematical level. Now, when you think about how it's applied to state, you can think of this 10 right here, or the 0, whatever this is, you can think of this as the initial state of your application. And then this add is applying state changes to that. And so 10 is the initial state, and then it's applying state changes to that. And so I could, instead of having just a simple sum, I could have what's called a reducer function. Instead of add, I could have function reducer. Let me do let reducer is equal to something like this. Oh my gosh, you finally get it? Good. And then inside of here, I'll take in, instead of x plus y, with returning x plus y, I'll take in state and action. And the state and the action are what is being applied to the set of states. And so, and I could return, technically with something like this, it's returning state plus action. This is the exact same function as this, it's just with different names. So, that being said, oh, I'm sorry you're lost, but hopefully this will start to make sense. Now let's, instead of using add, we're going to use reducer. And so I'm going to take this out and we'll put in reducer. And then instead of 10, what I'm going to do is have an initial state. So let initial state is equal to an object, and we could say a count starts at 0, and then we could have some other variable. Cake is true, fish is fishy, whatever we want. We could even do something more practical, like logged in is false. It could be anything. I'll just keep the count to 0 and the cake is true, but it could be anything. So now, yes, the cake is a lie. The cake is not a lie now, though. You prefer fishy? How about this? The cake is fishy. We want to apply state changes to this. And so instead of having an array of numbers, I'm going to comment this out. Instead of doing an array of numbers, what I'm going to do is I'll have an array of actions instead. And inside of this array of actions, I'll have an action type. And then this action type could be add. And whenever I have an action type add, I want to increase everything by 4. And then I could have an action of type minus, and then in that I want to decrease everything by 10. And I could also throw in another action even in between there, and I'll do type, and then I could say like bake cake or something. It could be anything. We're just making stuff up. You could get a payload. You could put whatever you want inside of this actions array. Now in the reducer, instead of just doing x plus y or state plus action, what we could then do instead is have an if statement, and we could say if action.type is equal to add, then we want to return the existing state, but we want to increase the count. And we want to increase the count by the current state.count plus the action.by, like that. And then I could do the exact same thing for minus, where if I do else, and then I'll do minus, and we're going to subtract instead. Don't yell at me yet, React, we'll fix it. And then I could have another else if, and then I could say if action.type is equal to bake cake, then what should the cake be? We don't want it to be fishy anymore. Return ... state, and we'll do cake is a lie. How about that? And so now cake is a lie when we bake it. And so now, because we're applying the actions and the reducer together, instead of doing reducer in 10, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do reducer and initial state. So I'm going to actually put this line down below. Okay, so we're taking our instead of array.reduce, it's actually actions.reduce because we renamed it. So we're taking each of these actions, we're taking our initial state, and then we're applying the actions to the initial state with this reducer function. And so if I were to save this now when we get the fish sum thing here, I guess sum isn't correct. Now it says that the count is -6 and the cake is a lie. And that is because we increased the count by 4, we added 4, we baked the cake, so now the cake is a lie instead of fishy, and then we decreased it by 10. And so the various state changes happen. And if I were to take out bake cake like this, then the cake should still be fishy, but we have add and minus being applied. Or if I were to change this to like 400 or something, then it starts at those values. Does that make sense? And yes, we can use a switch statement. I'm just using an if because it's just a few cases, but typically you would see switch. See you later, Josh. Thanks for coming. Why do I use let instead of const? Just because it's shorter. So anyway, you can do this with a switch statement. I could do something like switch on action.type and then convert that, and I could do for the case of add, and then have stuff in there, and then I'll have for the case of minus, and then do stuff in there, and then case of bake cake, stuff in there, and then I could say default. Inside the default, I'll just return the state, so nothing happens. Then I'll copy each of these lines in there really quick, so it's a little bit more readable. That, and then this, inside of that, save all of it, remove these lines, remove that. There, that might be a little bit cleaner. So this is how reducers work. This is how these things are applied. Now, the thing is, when you do this, if I were to just say, like, again, type is bake cake, something like this, we don't necessarily know what our users are going to be doing. And so you say, you just asked, is this a replacement for Redux? Haven't even gotten there yet. This has nothing to do with React. This is just JavaScript. Like, I haven't called any React functions in here. This is just me writing things down. But anyway, let's just say you have a bunch of buttons, you have users scrolling, you have people doing all kinds of different things. We don't necessarily know what our users' actions are going to be. And so when we want to populate this actions array, we have what's called a dispatch function. And you might recognize dispatch from Redux, from reducers and stuff. So when we populate that actions array, we're calling dispatch. And when we call dispatch, that is making a state change. And so all of this logic in JavaScript is how reducers were made in React, in useReducer, in Redux in general. Does that make sense? Let me know if it doesn't. Okay, so that being said, I made all of these different changes, but I don't want to pass in just those kinds of things down into my context right here. Which, by the way, really quick, I'll make a quick gist of this. And so if you want to read through it more and understand it a little bit more, let me uncomment this out, copy it here, and I'll paste it in here, and I'll do reducer content. Okay, so if you'd like to see more, you can check out the GIF or gist and understand it a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to take all of this out now. Now, inside of the app wrapper, instead of doing something silly like fish is sum or what we had before, where fish was fishy, what we can do is we can set up a useReducer and then do some state management across our entire application. And so what I could do is I could say let state and dispatch is equal to useReducer. And then inside of useReducer, it takes in 2 parameters. And it's just like what we did before. The first parameter is your reducer function. And then the second parameter is your initial state. And that's what we pass in. And so let's just say, actually, I'll make these named variables just so it's easier to understand. I could say let initial state, and then I'll say dark mode is false. And that's just what we'll use as an example. And then in our reducer function, we can do something a bit more complex where we could, yeah, you know what? It'll just be a simple reducer function. And so this is going to be a function in here, and just like before, we're going to take in state and action. Thanks, Call Me Tofu. I stream every week. If I need to stream more, I need to figure out like what people want to see, because it does take some time and effort on my part to stream more. But I appreciate your saying so. Okay. So with this state and action, we can do the exact same thing that we did before with a big case statement and stuff, but I'm just going to do a short one and say if action.type, and then if action.type is toggle dark mode, like this. Why is it yelling at me? Oh, that's just because I need to... There we go. If action.type toggle dark mode, then I'm going to say return, and then for now we only have one variable in there, but I'll do this ... state to be safe. And then I'll say dark mode is equal to the opposite of state.dark mode, like this. Cool. And then what I can do is I can pass in our state and reducer here. So I'll do state and dispatch. And so now that these state variables are passed in, you can see that we have the state and dark mode is false right here. Now we can actually use these across our application. And so if I were to go into our index.js that we had before, Twitch recommended this to me and was like, I know her from Twitter. Heyo, welcome. So now we have this context object, and right now it's just toggling dark mode is false or true or whatever. What I can do instead of logging this, instead of just stringifying it, I can actually make some state changes. And so let's just say I have a button in here, and I'm just gonna call this button toggle dark mode, like this. And in this toggle dark mode, I'm gonna make this smaller right here. What I want to do is I want to call a function that will call that dispatch. And so right now this context object in useAppContext, we have a state and a dispatch. Oh, why is it yelling at me? Oh, that's why. So if I pull in state, then dark mode is false. If I pull in dispatch, that's fine. Okay, I'm gonna take this off. Okay, and I'm going to have, for now, I'll say mode is state.dark mode, like this. And then with dispatch, because I'm passing that one in as well, this is where I want to have that type of action toggle dark mode passed through. And so I could, I'll make a little function here and be like, let toggle dark mode equal, and then inside of here, a dispatch. And I use the word type, it could be anything, but you know, it's easy. And so then I could do button on click, and then inside of here, toggle dark mode. So, oh, why are you mad at me now? Okay, I messed up something. Let's fix it. Okay, we got our state and dispatch, we got our reducer, we take in state and action. Object is not a function. Oh, you know, I might have passed something in wrong. First of all, let me console.log, and I'll do state right here, and I'm just gonna log some things down here and see what that looks like. Okay, so we got the object, that's fine. If I log dispatch, what do I get? Okay, so that should work. That's fine. Okay, let's see. Also, I wouldn't use this because the state of the machine isn't set in a list normally. Thanks, Brian. Let's see. Why isn't that... I think I missed something. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything important. I should be able to just call it. Let me do... I'm curious to see what that would do. It shouldn't do anything, but now I'm wondering. Oh, I get it. Okay. Let me just check this, because I think I know why. It's a Boolean, so it's funky. Yep, there it is. There it is. Now it's toggling. Whee! Okay. That was just being silly. Okay, so theoretically though, I don't have to do this, and that should still work. Great. And so, what I had before should still work. I think it was just my strings being weird. Yeah, it was. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So anyway, we get our state and dispatch from useReducer. When I toggle dark mode, it does this. I'm gonna save it. And now instead of just saying true and false, I can apply styles to something. And so, I could have something where if I pull up my global styles in here, I have container. What I could do is I'll say container.dark mode. I'll just do container.dark. And then if that is the case, then we'll do color is white, and then background is black. And we'll just do that. And then inside of our index, I'll turn this into a template string. And then I'll check some logic. If state.dark mode why are you mad at this? Oh, I gotta put it in braces. And then if dark mode is... Did I break something? Oh, not yet. If dark mode is true, then we want it to say dark. Otherwise, no. Do that. Okay. That should work, right? Hey, look at that. We made dark mode. Okay. Cool. The font is Mona Lisa. You can do ! editor to find out more. Can you also provide an example if you want to pass in a parameter? Yes. What I could do, oh, you know, I'm gonna copy one of my own examples that I made. You know what, I'll just type it out. Okay, so right now we have just dark mode as one of the things we track. We could have name is an empty string. And then whenever we want to change the name, we could have something like else if action.type is set name, then we want to return and then state, and then I'll pass in something called value. And so I'll just say action.value is going to be name, like this. Does that make sense? Okay. So now that we have this action.type set name possible in here, now we can make an input on our front page here. And so I'm going to take out this mode because now we don't necessarily need it. We'll just have this toggle dark mode and it'll just work. And now I'll also add an input to show what this would look like. So the button is calling a function. What is calling a function? What is calling reduce? So there's no array at this point. It's just a state variable that changes. Yeah, this is how I manage state in Next.js applications and in a lot of React applications as well. So what I want to do at this point is I'll say input, and then inside of here I'll do a type equals text, and then I'll do a placeholder says type your name. Okay, nice. Okay, that's showing up. Great. I'm gonna do that on that line. There we go. And then we'll do a value is equal to state.name. And then on change, we're going to have a function. And then inside of that, we're going to take in the event, because again, we're just typing in here. Then we would call a dispatch. And what did we say? Set name? Yeah, set name. And so we're going to dispatch an event of type is set name. And then the value of that will be event.target.value, which is kind of just JavaScript-y. Event.target.value, like that. So now, this doesn't really make sense to show without actually putting the name somewhere. And so I'm just going to say, welcome to my app, but I'm going to turn this into a template string instead of just quotes. And I'll say, welcome, and then in here, state.name, like that. So now it's undefined, but if I were to say, hello, or welcome, Cassidy, or whatever, then it'll work. And so that's how you can pass in a value to this. Can I increase the font size of the console? Oh yeah, sure. Wah! It's mostly just me typing, and then that dark mode is false. Wouldn't it be better for the perps to... Yeah, you can use it to bounce. I'm not gonna get into that right now. I am not in the mood. I thought I had to use set state in each component. Set state is something that is only in class-based components. You could use state, and you can make a reducer or make a state variable in every component. But if you're using context, you would do it there. Can we make the box fit the set name while typing it? I'm not sure what you mean. Like make the box increase and decrease in size? Technically, yes, but I don't want to do that CSS right now. You gotta go? Well, thanks for showing up. What is your opinion on local storage? I like it. I use it in different apps and stuff. I actually have, if you look at my to-do meter app, oops, well, that was my face. Didn't mean to show you that. My to-do meter app, I actually use React context in almost the exact same way, where I have a big app state reducer and I have the use context stuff and everything. But I actually pull my initial state from local storage, and I build it that way. So that's how that works. Okay, I'm gonna switch back to the chat. Because that was a lot of coding. Would y'all like me to push all of these changes to the repo or just the context part? I can push the state changes if you would like me to. I prefer this much more than Next.js. Yeah, don't use Redux if you can avoid it. Truly, it's you will be happy you didn't. Everything would be awesome. Okay, sure. 1 second. Let me just commit everything, and I'll share all of that with you. Okay, exit out of that, make sure I saved it. I'm just making sure I saved everything. Okay, cool. And then I'll link to the repo. Cool, I have pushed it. Let me make sure that it actually is there. Next context example. Cool, it's being deployed, but I'm gonna paste it in right here. We have a few Redux apps at work, and that's something I really don't want to work on. Yeah, I've been using it at work as we're trying to slowly get rid of Redux and update a bunch of stuff, and it's a lot. A lot of teams are very deep into Redux world because that's just what state management options we had a while ago, like in 2015, 2016. If you didn't use Redux, you weren't using state management well, and I was never a huge fan of Redux. I get it, but yeah, the world is moving away from Redux. Is there any link to information about not using Redux? You know, there probably is, but I would have to find it right now, and I don't have that much time to just find it right now. So just know it exists, and you can probably do some Googling and stuff, but I have meetings with the React core team where we talk about this, where we're just like, yes, like for teams that are still using Redux and are deep in Redux, it's good that it's being maintained. The people building Redux are great, but it's not recommended to use Redux anymore. Is it worth refactoring a project from Redux to Context API? Yes. And actually I did that. I told you about my to-do app that I made. If you'd like to go into the commit history, let me actually pull up the commits so that way you can see it. This version 2 major refactor, this right here, this is a very, very big commit, but it was me converting the entire site or the entire app from using Redux to using context. And it's a very big diff, and so I don't expect you to read all of it or anything. But that's something that I did too. Do you always wrap _app.js? In Next.js, that's what you do. If you want it shared across everything, you wrap _app.js. So yeah, Context API plus use state or useReducer. If you're comfortable with reducers, then use useReducer. If you prefer use state, use that. But context is just the transportation mechanism. The actual state management happens in useReducer or in use state. Cool, well, that was fun, everybody, talking about all this. Oh, we're getting rid of Redux little by little. We started with async state and migrating it to React Query. Nice. Yeah, once you pull out the fetch requests, that's how a lot of companies used Redux is for fetching things and storing data that way. And even using something like Apollo GraphQL on the Apollo client, That's a really nice way of pulling all of that out. Is the learning curve steep from Redux to context? I mean, I just showed you. It's pretty dang clean. And if you'd like, I can publish this video onto my YouTube channel. And if I do that, then you can watch it on demand, because I don't know how long Twitch stores things. But I've hopefully that repo is useful for you. Do you first have to refactor to functional components? Yes, you do. The context API in React hooks is just for functional components. I'm actually going to add my blog post that I wrote on the subject. I'm going to add the blog post that I wrote on this to the README of the repo that I just sent, so that way you can read the blog post as well as see that. So I'm just going to add that really quick. Okay, hang on one second. Here's an example of using React context with Next.js for cool. Linking to the blog post. You don't need to see my screen, which is why I'm not sharing it. Blog post to README. Cool, pushed. And so if you'd like to read my blog post on the subject too, that is also now in the repo. And I'm gonna post it in this chat one more time so you can check that out. Thank you, Korator. I appreciate it. I saw you went to study for Spain. Yeah, I got a minor in Spanish. And so I studied there for that. Ooh, my windows are starting to open up. I'm glad that it helped. I'm sorry that you were struggling with it. It's a tough learning curve, but then once you understand the concepts, it's a bit easier. I know you did most of this in one file for an example, but what would break the file structure if you were to break it out? So what I've done, the Jamstack Explorer's website is a really good example of this, and I would look at that because they broke it out across multiple files, and so check out Jamstack Explorers on the Netlify GitHub, and that breaks it out more, and you can see what that looks like. Do you use Apollo often? Not super often, but I've used it on some really large projects. For me, Redux really shines when you need data started to be updated in many places or from events coming through a WebSocket. You can without it, but yeah, I mean, you can do that with context and reducers for sure. Again, it's 90% of Redux can be done with context and useReducer. Hello, Castriz. Should I worry about using Vercel instead of Google Cloud for Next.js? I mean, I say you should use Netlify, but I'm biased. And I can talk in detail about some of that, but again, I work at Netlify, so that is where my bias comes from. But we support more things for your web development, whether you want to do split testing or snippet injection or identity, the authentication, robust redirects, that kind of stuff. We have a lot of stuff that you can use on Netlify specifically that will work with your projects, and lots of cool Next.js stuff coming down the pipeline. So I personally recommend using Netlify, but you can use whatever you want. Atomic deployments, yes. So good. I know this is dependent on the project, but do you have a favorite headless CMS? Strappy's good. My favorite lately is Prismic. I really like Prismic. And yes, it depends for everything, but I personally really like Prismic. Do you end up with many smaller context-based sites instead? I have worked on some really large enterprise level sites. Oh my gosh, I'm knocking something over. 1 second. I shouldn't have touched that. Okay. Anyway, I have worked on some really, really large context-based sites where I've done a lot of like training for different companies and helping companies out. And I've seen some mega large enterprise projects that literally have like 10 contexts in one giant app. It scales pretty well. I wouldn't recommend doing 10 contexts in one giant app. I would recommend splitting it out across your applications. But that's where Next.js is a little bit limiting in that regard, where you have to wrap your entire application with a context if you want to share it across all of your routes. Why not Gatsby? I mean, Gatsby's great too. I just don't use it very much because I'm not as familiar with it. Do you end up with smaller context-based states instead? Yeah, you can do a ton of what I've done, and what I recommend people do is be discerning in your context where, like, not necessarily in Next.js, because again, you have to wrap your entire app with everything if you want to share it across routes. But if you were to have a more vanilla React application, make the entire app wrapped in a context be like authentication. Is a user logged in, logged out, essential data. And then other parts of your application, you could just have smaller contexts here and there. You can have as many contexts as you want throughout your application. You don't necessarily need to wrap your entire application with a context everywhere. Gatsby's great. I see what you did there. Heyo. I gave it the green light. Am I right? Literature. Also, I'm eating corn now. Yay, you're moving to Netlify. Yay, I'm glad. Can you have one huge state that wraps the whole thing? Yep. I mean, you saw in that context example, which I'm going to keep pasting the link just in case people miss it. You saw I only had 2 state variables inside of that reducer. You can have as many as you want. I have seen some gigantic state objects where you typically, I would say, maybe you should separate these out into different reducers. Maybe you should separate these out into different contexts. If you want, you can put, this is a very like dark music and it's real. You can put everything into one giant state and one giant context. Do you want to? I don't know, but some people just want to watch the world burn. I'm going to change out of this scary music. Let's do something nice. If you're at liberty to share, are you a part of the React core team? No, I'm not. The core team things that I do, I'm not allowed to go into much more detail beyond the fact that I talk to them. And I'm sorry that I can't talk more about that. I would if I could, but I can't. Believe me, I think a lot of the real world users in the world would like to give the React core team feedback. All I can do is say, if you have feedback you really want to give, I am happy to write blog posts and content around it. But as a friendly criticism to the React core team, I've told them that they need to be more connected to their community because they don't... it's so popular that it's hard to get a lot of feedback to them. Sabotum. You say, why not develop your whole app in app.js? You say that as if people don't do that. I tell you, teaching React professionally and doing like consulting, navigating around companies, you see stuff. I've seen some files that are literally over 8,000, 10,000 lines long and they're just like, this is our React app. And it's like when they heard the phrase single page app, they were like, that means a single file. It's nasty. But you could, if you want. The worst abuse of Redux I saw was when a Redux object was mutated inside of React class components. I could see that getting hairy. The amount of feedback would be overwhelming. Yeah, exactly. Like, we could have a real world user give them feedback, but that would probably go on the pile. They get a lot of feedback all the time, and believe me, I yell at them plenty. Do you use vanilla CSS and CSS modules or something else? Yeah, either vanilla CSS or Sass. Depends on my mood. Yeah, don't write spaghetti. You can, but you shouldn't. There are other things that you could do. If you have one file, you don't have to worry about naming. True. Thanks for clipping that. You know, spaghetti code is job security. My old boss, Ryan Florence, he used to say, like, I love legacy code. And I was like, really? And he's like, I love legacy code because that means money. And I'm like, you know, that's a good point. Because when you're doing contracting stuff, when you're helping teams out, legacy code means there's a lot of money to be made to fix it. Wow, you worked with Ryan? Yeah. Painful money. Yeah, no, Ryan is great. We actually had a call this past week to get Remix working on Netlify, but React training unfortunately didn't survive the pandemic, and they had to lay off all staff, and so I worked with Ryan on our React training team, teaching workshops and stuff for a little while until the pandemic shut the company down, and that is how I ended up where I am, and I'm really happy we're here. I can also sell my kidney on the black market. Yes, you could. Even with the best intentions as a dragon to maintain. Yeah, I mean, even if you look at the Netlify source code, like I've been helping upgrade some parts of it, like a lot of it I'm like, oh, this is disgusting. But I totally get where you were coming from, because when this was written and you look at the Git blame, it was like 3 or 4 years ago, it makes sense why they did it this way. It totally makes sense. But today, you would not write it like that. There are options. You would not do that. And so that's just what happens with larger organizations as they grow. How could you follow me on LinkedIn? My LinkedIn handle is Cassadoo. I don't post that much on LinkedIn though, so I don't know if you'd want to follow me there. Have I worked with WebAssembly? Not enough to have a good opinion on it. It's cool, Rust, etc., blah, 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 but I haven't used it a ton. Yeah, legacy was once the state of the art. And that's something that I tell actually a lot of junior developers and even like junior devs that are becoming mid-level devs. Like, don't ever just say, oh, this code is bad. Because chances are it was pretty good at the time it was written. And so many times I've looked at a Git blame and been just like, oh my gosh, who wrote this? And it was me just a long time ago. And that's a sign of growth. But you don't need to say, oh, this is bad. Just say, oh, this is old. That's almost always the answer. How do you know when to leave a company? Asking for a friend. I would say, are you learning? Are you treated with respect? Is there toxicity at all? The respect one is so big it deserves another finger. Like, truly, are you treated with respect? It's huge. Because if you're not, you gotta get out of there. Because other companies will respect you. Am I getting paid? I mean, I have a job, so yes. Am I getting paid for this stream? Thanks, subs. I am, thanks to you. It's not much, but, you know, having subscribers allows me to have music on this stream. Subs pay for the music. Thank you all. I do not exactly profit from this, but it's fun to talk with all of you. Please stop only. I can only say no so many times. No! Oh, imagine the code written before AWS. You poor soul. Yeah, that's rough. I mean as a question to ask yourself if to leave a company. Oh, are you getting paid? If you're not getting paid, you gotta leave. Get paid. Oh my goodness. I actually do... So I do this one podcast. I host a podcast called CIO Classified. It's not really a target audience. The developers are not the target audience. So if you're not interested in like hearing how leadership thinks about IT, I don't recommend it. But hey, if you're an IT leader, it might be interesting to you. But on this podcast, we've been talking with just IT leaders all over the world. It's not much, but it's honest work. Talking to all of these different CIOs at different companies. And what's been really interesting is the very key thing is they're just like, if you want to make money, go into security. Because yes, making apps is very fun, writing code is very fun. But if you're in it for the money, I've really been learning that security is the place to be. It's been an interesting conversation to have with a lot of people. Learning something new, good people, on with company leadership and vision, and getting paid well enough. Yeah. F. Gabriel, thank you so much for coming from Argentina. Bienvenidos. You just left security for SWE? Nice. I'm personally not interested in security at all because it is a lot of pressure. It seems scary to me. I am not a fan. That being said, if you don't care, that's the place to be. Yeah, and Fortran and COBOL, seriously. Insurance companies almost always have COBOL somewhere in their stack. Job security. Pair programming, of course it still exists. I was pair programming right before streaming, actually. My corn! Everything's fine. Ben! He's a good pair programmer. Ben codes in. Ben knows everything about productivity, and I highly recommend you follow him both on Twitter and on Twitch for learning how you can be better than you are, because I learn that every time I talk to Ben. Ooh, hay muchos desde Argentina. Welcome. Fintech does pay pretty well. Depends on the area of fintech, though. You're trying to get my foot in the door in security. Yeah, I mean, networking helps, going to events and meetups and stuff. I didn't get a tech job in Chicago, but I did get a job at the IMF. I don't know what that is. Oh, nice. Oh, hey, I'm in Chicago. I can refer you to places. I don't know a ton of people, but there's some folks. The monetary fund, got it. In your own words, can you define OOP and functional? OOP, everything's an object. Functional, everything's a function. That is the fast way I would describe it. Hey, Chicago! Someday let's have a meetup when it's not the end of the world. Andy, you know I can refer you to the best food here. Have I tried Tailwind? Yes, but I don't like it. I prefer utility things like Bulma and stuff, but I personally am not a huge Tailwind fan myself. Ooh, your girlfriend's starting coding, nice. What CSS methodology do you use for Next? I almost always use CSS modules. My biggest project that I did recently was CSS modules and Bulma. And so I used Bulma as a utility for like base classes and my global styles, but then for specific components that required custom things, I used CSS modules to override things and add some extra classes. I haven't used Theme UI, no. Lil Malnati's got deals this week? Guess I'm going to lose. I'm also on a wait list, and I think I'll be able to get a vaccine this weekend, which would be amazing. Oh my gosh, that would be great. Is Bulma replacing Bootstrap for a lot of people? It depends on who you talk to. I think they cover different use cases. Because Bulma is a little less opinionated than Bootstrap. I didn't want to use Bootstrap and I didn't want to use Tailwind, but I did want to have some like grid stuff defined for me so I didn't have to reinvent the wheel, and so that's why I did that. Tailwind Creator says, if you can suppress the urge to retch long enough, you'll wonder how you ever work with CSS any other way. Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'll leave one sentence about Tailwind and leave it at that. I wish that they had a more diverse team and gave credit where credit's due. And I'm leaving it at that. They say after getting the vaccine, you write better ASP and C#. Oh, look at that. Ha 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 ha. Do you know Josh? Josh's course seems amazing. I'm so happy for him making so much money on that course, and he's so talented too. He deserves it. That's awesome. Why did you not use Bootstrap personally? Because I'm too opinionated. That's the summary there. Bootstrap, I mean, I did back when I couldn't write CSS as well, and when I didn't want to care about writing CSS as much, but now I like writing CSS a little bit more, and Bootstrap just, it's too opinionated and my opinion clashes with theirs, and there's only room for one of us. Yeah, and then your site looks like everyone else's. There's enough configuration overrides in Bulma, and that's why I like it. To use TypeScript? Not if I can help it. Note to self, just use Bootstrap because you'll never learn CSS. I mean, hey, CSS, Bootstrap works, and for every backend dev I know that wants to get better at CSS stuff, they use Bootstrap, and it's a perfect way to get into it. I think there's a great place for it. I think there's a wonderful place for it in the dev community, but it's something that I don't want to use. Do you find concurrent mode useful? I think it will be more useful for libraries, for React libraries and framework authors. I don't think it will be that groundbreaking for individual developers building with React. So there you go. Gonna eat more corn. I'm sorry I ruined it for you. If you really, I mean, it's a good technology. Go ahead and use it. Pick your battles. Concurrent mode is something that the React team announced like 3 years ago and hasn't released yet. And granted, they're doing a lot of R&D to make sure it's done right, and so I get it. But at this point, it's kind of humorous. Alright, fam. I want to kind of eat my corn in silence, but it was really good chatting with all of you. I am hoping, yeah, it's basically a meme, right? I am hoping to start streaming more. If y'all have opinions on days and times and stuff, let me know. Because I'm open to it. Like, if this time is generally good, great. If you prefer earlier or later on a different day. Probably not on weekends as much, at least for a little while. because I'm moving and renovating and stuff on weekends and not doing tech things. But if it's sometime during the week and you have a preferred time, let me know, because otherwise I'm just gonna stick to Thursdays until otherwise stated. Cool. Well, thank you all so much. I will upload this particular stream to YouTube so that way you can see the context stuff. I'm going to paste this one last time in the chat. So if you want to see the context example, that's the repo, and then there's a link to the blog post in the README as well if you'd like to read it. This time is good for the Europe people. Nice, great. Love my Europeans. Hopefully I can visit y'all someday. But until then, it was very, very fun, and I'm going to raid another channel, so I hope y'all do well. Have a good one.